Everybody, and welcome back to Cece's Corner. As you can see, I'm in the same spot as I was in last week. I'm not permanently changing the spot that I'm filming, it's just for convenience at this point. You're probably gonna be wondering, today's not Sunday, why is she late? Or maybe you just won't be wondering, but basically, I was trying to get rid of this guy, but I couldn't, so here we are, and I'm just gonna be doing it. So please ignore this, and also, of course, again, ignore my hair. I did brush it, but here we are. This is just how it's going to be. So this is like a radical exercise for me in self-acceptance, because normally I wouldn't present myself like that, but yeah, here we are. Today I want to be talking to you about changes. And I mean changes in life, but also changes within yourself, because I feel like in my surroundings and also in my own personal life, changes are happening everywhere, and it's a very pivotal time in life in general right now for a lot of people in my life, but also we as humans always encounter change, and we always fluctuate, and things are always happening, and there's a certain unpredictability about life as a whole. So it's just inevitable that sometimes things move in different directions, and some things that we have control over, and other things that we don't. But either way, I thought it could be important to make content on this, because I see a lot of people talk about it, but I wanted to kind of delve into some instructions and some more specific situations to really like not go deep, but really maybe kind of let you go with a framework that maybe is helpful to navigate if you are currently changing or are about to encounter some situations where you might need to be a little bit flexible. And yes, there's also change and change management in like a working type of situation, but this is not what we are trying to focus on today. I really want to talk about the mindset and like how change affects us within ourselves. But yeah, I wrote a little something as an introduction. I said, we are constantly evolving as humans throughout our life. Our bodies change, but so do our minds. Plus, like I said earlier, there's so much uncertainty in life and what it brings to us, that it can be difficult to adapt. There's a struggle there. And I think it's important that we work on trying to find a way through, and not resist the change, even though it's oftentimes extremely uncomfortable. It can be super painful depending on the circumstances. So yeah, like I said, just want to do a little bit of a manual, so to say, for everybody, and also including me, to be honest, how to navigate that. So primarily, when change occurs, we kind of have to put our reflecting glasses on and look at ourselves in the mirror, because we are going to question who we are and question our core identity, questioning our circumstances and everything, especially if changing means giving up something that means a lot to you, especially if there's a price to the change. I think like often often when we talk about mental health and then we end up getting better, that sometimes means to let go of some negative things in our lives, but that can also be extremely painful, because negative patterns, negative behaviors, things that are so central to our belief system and what we always thought, it's kind of hard to let go of. And then if we extend that a little bit, sometimes we just gotta let go of some people that weren't really good for us, or we have to limit exposure to certain things, and so on and so forth. And I think yeah, It's tough. It's never easy. But it means if we move into the future, move into our future, there are losses that come with it of what has been in the past. So that's very important to know. And a few steps that I found that were recommended when I did some research were you just embrace the uncertainty, meaning changing or life changing, altering will be easier if you are just able to accept that there is no plan, that there is no way of navigating every single step that's going to come, but that rather you can just accept that everything is kind of in limbo, that there's not really a structure to it. And I think endings are hard, but also moving forward and not really having a plan is hard, especially for people that are naturally quite anxious. It can be super tough. But I think making plans in smaller steps and supporting yourself, but also being accepting, like I said, about the fact that things just aren't in order, things aren't perfect. If you can do that, I think it's going to be so much easier for you to just generally navigate the fact that things are moving forward. And then I also wrote down, notice the open window is a quote from a page where I did research on. But basically, it means when change occurs, when change happens, it means that we grieve old versions of ourselves, old versions of our life. And we should try and focus not on the closing door to the past, but we should try and focus on noticing the open window, because with every situation, there is an opportunity for growth and letting positivity come back into your life. And before you take that too literally, of course, there are situations in life where that is not the case. I am not talking about specific scenarios that are catastrophes. I'm talking about just general movement of life and negative situations in life and navigating all of it with mental health. But I'm not saying like it within the framework of changing through life, please. But I also said, what are some signs that you might be ready for the change? What are some signs that can help you out when you notice this within yourself, that now's the time to move on it, now's the time to really go for it, now's the time to do it? Because I feel like, yeah, we can sometimes get stuck when we notice a change is necessary, but there's a lot of anxiety, panic involved, a lot of uncertainty, and we can sometimes not be so good at recognizing, oh, but I'm ready, and now's the point where I should be making a move. So I think signs that we are ready to change is we have properly processed all of our emotions. So we've kind of looked at positive and negative emotions, we've really thought this through, and we know how we feel after. So said, clarity on what you want, but just hesitating out of fear or waiting for things to align. Such as, for example, you always wanted to work abroad, and the opportunity arises that you can do it, but you are hesitant because it would mean moving your whole life away from what you know, away from your loved ones, etc. And then, maybe missing out on the opportunity of doing what you've always been wanting to do. So I feel like, of course, think about things logically and like think about it in the sense of, do I really need this? Is this really something that I want? And really think it through. But if you're past that point and you basically made the decision, go for it, don't wait. Because hesitation often also turns to procrastination, and that's another point that I have right here on my list, is like, don't wait so long that you don't follow through on what you want and need, because oftentimes you know best, And I know that is something that a lot of people struggle with, because we have so many influences coming at us from outside and coming at us from social media and all of that type of stuff, where this should be what life looks like, this is what you should be expecting, etc. But the reality is that you know yourself best, you know your needs, you know who you are best, and I think you're capable of making decisions when the time arises, that will suit you. And it doesn't always have to be final. There's always room for more change and more growth. It's not stagnant. So if we make one decision that changes things, it doesn't mean that in a couple of years it's not going to change in another direction again. Unfortunately, that is a truth. Like, we are not stuck in any sort of situation. We are evolving, we are moving, we have the power to decide, at least at least to a certain degree. Of course, I understand that there's life circumstances where you don't really have a choice. I understand that. But just overall, I think that we sometimes feel trapped within our lives because we don't think what we actually want is attainable. And I do think that we can take little steps in the direction. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it requires a lot of patience. But I think we can take baby steps, and eventually we will figure out if that's what we want or not want, and if it's realistic, and yeah. But the last point I really wanted to make is, what does it mean if I'm ready to step into change? I think the most important thing that I've written down is to be compassionate towards yourself. Be kind, because you are going to be scared, you are going to be overwhelmed, things aren't always going to work out, so be compassionate. And then I also said, don't rush or overdo it, in the sense of, don't run so fast that you don't feel the ground. Like, make sure that the steps you take and the things that you are doing are thought through. Because I think, like, at least for me, sometimes we get so excited by an idea that kind of feels right, and that doesn't mean that it's not right, but getting there is just a matter of patience, it's a matter of planning. So we shouldn't rush into it just because it feels urgent at this point. I said, actually make space for change. What does that mean? Well, it's all fine and dandy if it's a thought that we have, and if it's something that is happening within ourselves. There's oftentimes no outlet to the outside world where it says, oh, she's in process of change, that's why things are, a certain type of way. But just embrace the fact that there's new things coming, and make room for them and be accepting towards them. And then I also said, always continuously check in with yourself. Like, try to really focus on yourself and what you need within this time, because I feel like it's so complex that we really need to tap into ourselves in order to kind of get out of the change in a positive way. Yeah. And then I said, try and look at things more short term so that you don't overwhelm yourself. Like, I know it's important to have long-term goals, and that's not what I'm saying, but when you are changing and when things are happening or a life circumstance happens and change is required, try to really focus on right now. Focus on steps in the present. Don't think too far ahead, because it can get super, super overwhelming, and that's what we don't want. We want to navigate change with the most positive mental health that we can possibly have while navigating a hard transition. So I think that's really important. And then I said, see what works for you specifically. Some people are very extreme, where they need like instant gratification, instant change, and some people are more gradual. So just tap into what works for you and what you need in order to get to where you want to be going, but in a positive way. And then celebrate the wins. big or small. There's so many things that come with changing that are easily overlooked. But I think if you're changing within yourself and it's not something that's navigated outside of your body, but it has an effect on you, specifically the little things that are positive, really, really focus on those. It's so important because I think that's the only way that we can actually notice that things are moving and things are progressing, which is what we want. So really celebrate those wins. And then I said, try and find your new normal. Especially in this type of limbo state, it can be hard to kind of exist in the space in between. But it's really hard to just live in it. So try and find a way to be accepting of that. And then I said, I think to close this off, I really want to say that 90% of the time, I think the opportunity at the end of the tunnel is worth the struggle, because that is literally what life is all about. It's not meant to be stagnant. It's not meant to be in one place. It's always supposed to be moving. Things happen, we evolve, circumstances change, relationships change, and I think all of this is a form of change that has an influence on our life and the progression of it and where it ends up going. So I think if we can focus on viewing it as a chance, as an opportunity, it might be the easiest way to get through it. If you have any questions or wanting to discuss certain things, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much as always for watching, and love you. Bye.